let's start right away with the purpose of this training. So the idea is really that this is the first batch of IPCC Ref champions. So the idea here is that that after this you would be able to support your colleagues in using the ref, as well as use the ref yourself, and yeah, tell people what problems it can or could solve and what problems it probably can't solve, so that people know how to use the tool and be able to use the full potential. And what does it mean in particular? So what will be the content of today? So we want to introduce the concept of the rapid evaluation framework, that it has two parts: the stable community-driven assessment fast-track deployment and dashboard with a specific purpose in mind and specific implemented parts. And on the other hand, an extensible software framework, which could also be used for other purposes in the community and is extensible. And then we will also outline, I will outline how we think that the AFT ref could help the workflows of IPCC authors, probably due to the focus on, of course, model evaluation on Working Group 1, but maybe also Working Group 2 and 3. And then our purpose is also to gain feedback on the gaps in data and functionality that is available from the AFT ref and from your lens. And yeah, after this workshop, you should be able to explore and then explain how the AFT ref could support your and others' work, and also provide feedback, because that is of course critical to get to make most use and see how the ref could most effectively support your work. So the structure of the talk is and the workshop is that I first introduce quickly what the ref is and what the ref and the AFT ref in specific can do today. And then maybe have a look at one workflow that we think is particularly important maybe for IPCC workflows. It's a notebook-based approach. And we will also talk a bit about current gaps and also about our plans for provenance and citation support. Then we'll have question breaks and a comfort break along the way. And after the break, we will look into how does it work. Have so a bit more the technical part of how does the RAF work, how the diagnostic collections work, what the workflows and governance are, how the data has to be structured so that it can enter into the RAF. And then also how does it work to access the results with a demo of the dashboard and an overview of other available tutorials and materials, and which also will explain how to query results from the rapid evaluation framework. And at the end, we will have another question opportunity, so that all the questions that haven't been answered in the first one can be answered in the second one. So we'll start with what is the REF? So the rapid evaluation framework is a framework to orchestrate the execution of community climate model diagnostics in a consistent and traceable way, and also publishing the resulting metrics, figures, and provenance for others to use. And yeah, the idea is really to make it much faster for users to find and interpret and use model evaluation results without either waiting for the paper, which comes maybe out in a year or two, or having to rerun every diagnostic themselves, which also means they need to organize access to a large volumes of data and maybe on computational and yeah, the hardware to run all the diagnostics. So that is the idea, to make it much faster, to go from the availability of model results to the availability of model evaluation results. So the ref is a tool for running diagnostics on ESM output. And I guess not only technically, but also the process, the community process around it enforces standardization so that you get output data that looks the same, no matter whether the diagnostic is based on ESM-Val tool, PMP, so the PCMDI evaluation package, or IAMP, iLAMP, or a custom script. The output within the ref is then always in the same format. And what's also quite important, it tracks results in a database. So you can see how values change over time on the one hand, and also you can access previously calculated values if you need it, which is important for reusability and reproducibility and traceability. It not only tracks the results in the database, it also tracks all the inputs for the result that were used to derive the result in the same database. The ref is also extensible to support different requirements. We will see more about that split later. Since CMIP 7 results are not yet available, we have developed the ref with CMIP 6 results and are using them today as a demonstration of its capabilities. But the idea is really that as the CMIP 7 dataset is published, as soon as model results are available, even only a few ones, there will be a live collection of evaluation data for users to exploit. And here is the more formal goal and outcome overview of what the climate ref wants to do. And you can see that this is like an end-to-end system for model evaluation. And yeah, the idea has always been to also support the Assessment Report 7 cycle with this. But of course, just from the community where it comes from, with a focus on model evaluation. Yeah, and of course, the ref then is only a starting point for deeper exploration of the CMIP model data. It is not the end-all solution for all the things you can do with the model data, of course. So standardization is really quite important. So that's why I want to stress it again, that this is only possible, these short turnaround times and the standardization of output is because of the focus on standardization and quality assurance of the community during the last years. So we found a lot of metadata inconsistencies as a community in CMIP 6, and having this early on fixed. So already in model output, having all the metadata consistent, this is the prerequisite that enables to then automatically run these model evaluation diagnostics and get the standardized set of results. And that is, of course, also, we think, the right approach to have these fixes or like to do the standardization as early as possible in the pipeline, so that everyone downstream can enjoy the benefits of the standardized metadata and also data that is provided. So now to this split that I already hinted at. So the climate ref is the open source extensible software framework. It's a collection of software packages and interfaces. So the building blocks and the command line tool that you can run yourself. And modeling centers also do this or are interested in doing this, running the ref themselves, maybe with diagnostics that they develop themselves internally to evaluate model output even before public publication. That is one side, and then the other side is the CMIP 7 Assessment Fast Track Ref, so the AFT Ref, which is one deployment of the climate ref, a central deployment, which has a focus on the CMIP 7 Assessment Fast Track datasets, which are not available, which is why we've built it so far on CMIP 6 results. And it runs a consistent set of community diagnostics that were defined by the CMIP model benchmarking task team after community consultation to have a broad and like widely useful set of diagnostics. And it will be deployed on ESGF East and West nodes. Yeah, and it's designed to be extensible, but it's also a work in progress. The project was driven by the timelines of the AFT, and those timelines were quite tight, so we had to focus on that. And this framework deployment split is not yet fully clean, but we are getting there to enable also other deployments. So how does the framework look like? So it all starts with the data inputs, of course, and those are two types of inputs. On the one hand, the summarized model data from ESM output data, and on the other hand, REF compliant reference data sets that we use for model benchmarking. And the key step here is, of course, that these data inputs are not static. The reference data is not updated very often, but the model data is updated hopefully very often now, very soon, when the first CMIP 7 results become available, and whenever a new result becomes available, this is re-evaluated, and in the model like in the central model evaluation framework, this triggers a solve step where like a solve means we are checking what new evaluations can be calculated because there's new data available, what needs to be calculated because it hasn't been calculated so far, and then this is executed. So a specific diagnostic is calculated, and this is batched out to one of the pre-existing community tools, because the REF doesn't implement new diagnostics. Instead, it's providing the orchestration of the existing community packages, which for the AFT REF are PMP, ESM tool, and iLab. And using these, the diagnostics are calculated and then saved in a defined format and into the database, which then the database can be accessed using an API. And from the API, you can, on one hand, query and download output files and values directly. Or we also have a dashboard for the AFT REF for online exploration of results. And here highlighted other things which are really quite specific for the assessment fast track REF at the moment. So the data inputs are, of course, the assessment fast track is working on the CMIP 7 assessment fast track data. The diagnostics that were selected for this assessment fast track evaluation, and then the visualization of the results in the dashboard is also specific, of course, to the diagnostics that were selected. And the rest is not very specific to and can be used easily in other contexts. So what is unique about the REF? So what does it add? So first, it has a database for tracking the life cycle of results, which is good for traceability and means you can select relevant results, results which are relevant for you. It is diagnostic agnostic, which means there's a common interface for diagnostic providers and downstream consumers. In principle, we have already demonstrated that you can adapt to 3 different community packages to 3 different diagnostic providers and add them have the common interface for all 3. And of course, if you can do 3, then probably you can do 4, given some work, of course. And then something we also do is we focus on the values rather than the figures. So the figures that maybe are generated during model evaluation are also available, but we also try to extract scalar values and time series values in a common format and save those to the database, which means that it is later possible downstream to answer questions which make use of the data and like remix the data for bespoke analysis. And the other thing which we made sure is to have a divide and conquer approach to the diagnostic evaluation, where we try to run really a small package of work for each data set and each diagnostic, only what needs to be done. And we don't have to rerun all of the diagnostics when a new data set is added, which enables us to do rapid updating, to not have to wait for a full set of data to be available. But as soon as enough data for evaluating a specific diagnostic is available, we can do that. Maybe here also what the AFT ref is not. It's not an evaluation package. As I said, we don't implement new diagnostics inside the ref. Instead, we are using existing community tools. It's not a download tool, or at least not only. It manages the computation and interconnections between the diagnostic outputs and the actual evaluation. And then, of course, you can download the results from that. And it's not a custom compute platform. So the public AFT version runs a broad but defined set of diagnostics chosen from consultation with the community. Yeah, and then it also has some dynamic figures, this deployment, to make it easier to evaluate and explore the results. As said, it's a community tool, so we have designed it to be extensible and open source, and also be available to everybody and serve as large a user group as possible. And the community coordination and governance will be provided in future by ESMO, and any CMIP related diagnostics or other CMIP related ref matters are still handled by the CMIP panel. But we hope it will be also useful outside of CMIP. Of course, community and open source means expansion is possible, but that, of course, still will require community agreement, a coordination to deliver, and needed resources. It's not happening automatically. So, a short recap what this introduction was. So the ref provides a way of accessing a shared database of diagnostics and metric values that are evaluated centrally, and the ref's focus is on managing the life cycle of results. The diagnostics come from existing community packages, but there is this database added, which makes it possible to have the same results for all of the users. And then there's a framework and a specific deployment, and all of this is built as a community tool. So what can the ref do today? You can already access the ref results. At the moment, of course, only CMIP 6 results, but very soon now also CMIP 7 results on a dashboard. You can explore all the diagnostics and also explore the data. You can use the API for programmatic access for scripts and pipelines. And you can also run your own deployment on your laptop for small diagnostics or wherever you have more compute available. Either because you have custom data or because you have custom diagnostics that are not in the public AFT deployment. The AFT deployment will be hosted at CEDA and ORNL in the coming months. But this is not yet finished. Currently, these are hosted and run by Climate Resource. We will go through all of this, or at least touch all of these ways to access the ref results. but I focus on workflows which are most applicable for IPCC authors, hopefully. When using the ref, there's also a best practice document which was provided by members of the CMIP and RIF's joint task team on responsible data use, and for members of the CMIP model benchmarking task team. And yeah, it has some quite useful information on how to interpret the results and what to do with the results. And so if you're using the ref outputs, do check it out. And also on this topic, there is governance, how the governance of the community works at the moment. The ref was originated out of the model benchmarking task team for CMIP 7. And this is where the initial set of diagnostics come from, but it's being moved to ESMO and will be then to make it the right governance structure also for wider use. And of course, the specifics of model evaluation in CMIP 7, we realized that maybe this is not completely in line with the requirements of IPCC authors, even though we have been thinking about this use case. But this is why we are engaging relatively early and hoping to get your feedback to make it more usable for you. And yeah, one thing that might be an idea that could be discussed is if you want another deployment or a staging deployment of the ref where you can add other diagnostics quickly. But the aim should always be to eventually converge and get all of this into the standard deployment. But yeah, this will be quite good for us to understand your use cases and needs. So what is the status of CMIP 7 evaluation? The CMIP 7 results, the evaluation results from the ref, will become available shortly after being published, of the actual model data being published on ESGF. For the first few models, we will probably need to run this manually, but the machinery is prepared and standing by to automatically update when new datasets are available. And we hope that after ironing out a few kinks that certainly will be there, this will be something that runs automatically and hours or maybe a day after a result is being published. The benchmarking results are also available. For some benchmarks, it's not very useful to have them for maybe only 1 or 2 models. So until a data completeness threshold is met, there will be a banner marking the results as provisional. And yeah, I mean, we have done all we can to make it ready for CMIP 7. But yeah, there might be some issues while we are getting the first CMIP 7 data. So we might also need to rerun some of the diagnostics of the very early diagnostics. Cool. So given all this, what is the way we hope we can support IPCC workflows? So one workflow that might be very applicable is where a figure generation is implemented in notebooks or scripts, typically R or Python, but anything that can call an API will work with the ref. And then the notebook queries the API for results. And then you could also export the data and provenance information to be used in figures from the API in the notebooks. And yeah, maybe that needs some helper functionality that is yet to be developed to streamline the process. But this would be the process to do it. And then the notebook and provenance and data become artifacts that are tracked within the IPCC ecosystem. And the idea then is, of course, that the figures would be built in notebooks that can be easily updated and rerun as new data arrives. so that if after a month or two more model data is available, you can rerun it. And this works now already for diagnostics that are included in the assessment fast tracks. So you can start developing now, of course, with CMIP 6 data now, but hopefully in 2 weeks already with the first CMIP 7 data. And available here are scalar and time series values. And there is one tutorial, we have a set of tutorial notebooks, and I would like to show you one, which is basically a whetting your appetite kind of notebook to show you what would be, how it could look like. And I have to share another, like the right tab for that. I hope you can see the notebook now.
Yes, we can see it well.
Great. So the idea here in the notebook is to create a custom figure, which is shows historical temperatures from models, colored or grouped by their equilibrium climate sensitivity. And the equilibrium climate sensitivity is, of course, a scalar, and the global mean near surface air temperature is a time series. And the idea is here that we query the results that are available from the ref and build a figure in this notebook. And we don't have to run all the, for example, ECS evaluations because they were already run by the ref. So I will run through the not so interesting parts where there's mostly setup, but then like the basic steps I will explain. So at first we have to fetch the ECS values that the ref has evaluated. And for that, of course, you have to first check which diagnostics are available. In this case, we know that that is called equilibrium climate sensitivity. We need the slug of the diagnostic, so the name of the diagnostic. And we also have looked up that this is created using ESML tool. And then we get the data. We can have a look at the data. And here we see that there is a wide range of ECS values by model. And then we can similarly fetch the historical global mean temperature time series. So this is also a diagnostic published by the ref. Here we have to do a bit more work to select the right the time series and also paginate the query, which means fetching the results bit by bit. But this is something that maybe could also be in a helper eventually. And then we have to do some tidying up of all of this to get it in a format that we can easily plot. And then finally, so here, this is the format that we have cleaned it up a bit. And then we can finally actually build the figure. And you can see that we can have this figure where there is actual historical, so the benchmark values in the thick line. And then we see the model results for the historical run, and they are colored by ECS value. And yeah, we can also create alternative views of the same relationships because we choose the figure that we actually want to plot here. So if we instead want to plot individual end of historical warming values versus ECS and maybe make some custom analysis like here, this fit, this is also possible, built on this capability of the ref that it actually provides not figures that were thought of when defining the diagnostic, but the actual values and time series values so that you can build your bespoke analysis downstream. That is this notebook, of course, not going into detail, but just to give you an idea what our vision is, what you can do with this. So, back to the presentation. So what did we do here? We built a publication-ready figure from ref results, and yeah, here the notebook is also used. You can rerun it with models you care about or do something else. I will later show how you can access the tutorial notebooks. So this is our general idea, and then also, of course, what are the other benefits of using the AFT ref here? Is because it's a consistent, public, and easily queried database of computed values based on the latest available CMIP 7 data. You can get it via the API, and this also ensures, if you go via this route, that everybody gets the same data. So if you have multiple authors running the same notebook, you get the same latest results. And maybe also here a good pointer, if there's any, if you are missing data, the CMIP 7 data has become available, but it's missing, or if there are any errors, then please raise an issue in the GitHub repository. That is really the easiest way to reach the development team. Yeah, and as I already said, using the AFT ref in this way would support consistency across authors, because it's the same set of models, and it would avoid the issue of one author calculating ECS using one method while another author uses another method. Instead, this is using always the same method, which is based on the community packages that are well known to be in the community and chosen for this diagnostic. And of course, this would also greatly reduce overall compute usage, because this is only computed once, and not only compute but data usage. You don't have to, like, not all authors need to download and compute global means. So not everybody needs the full data if they are building on the diagnostics that are actually available. The other thing that we are really hoping to build, and we have the building blocks, is first-class support for reproducibility. You can decide if you want to query all of the models that are currently available, or only the models that have data published by a given date. So you don't get a surprise when you rerun your script in 6 months' time. So you can choose if you want to update to all the new available data or not. And probably it could also support consistency across working groups, not only across authors, but also working groups, if people are actually using the same database of values. We say here will have first-class support for reproducibility, because the database already supports this, but the API at the moment doesn't have all of the query fields that are needed to support this. But there it would also be very useful for us to know what your requirements are, because yeah, that would be better than designing the API here in the dark. So for example, if it will be common to want to have only models that have data published by a given date, or if it is you only want evaluations that have been available at a specific time. These are possible, but yeah, it would be interesting to know what would be the most useful for you. What the AFT also cannot do right now, it can only, of course, work right now for all the diagnostics that are available in the blessed set that are already implemented. Of course, with sufficient planning, new diagnostics can be added, but as we're using community resources, we want to ensure that the diagnostics that we are adding are the of like broadest use. So we cannot add all of maybe niche diagnostics, and of course it takes some time. So you can always run yourself with other diagnostics, but of course, if it's useful, it would be good to converge eventually. But maybe there's some need to not always go through the AFT ref deployment if you have other diagnostics. And then, of course, the AFT ref can only run on ESGF index nodes, so it can only use data that is available on those nodes. Due to the diagnostic that we wanted to run within the AFT ref, and also, of course, just the tight timelines, we have focused on only monthly resolution data so far. Of course, you can run on other resolution data if you have the data available. And during a hackathon, we have already run the ref on high CMIP results. So if you have some time to set it up, it's also technically possible to run this on other resolutions, but it's not something that the AFT ref is doing right now. And it's also not really planned to add high res data to the AFT ref really ever, but of course something you can do with the framework. And of course, the AFT ref doesn't download data for you or provide access to the raw model data. If you need the raw data, you have to go to the ESGF. The AFT ref only provides you with the model evaluation results and not with the input data. It can tell you which input data was used, but you can't download the input data through the web. Now, a bit of a different topic. This is the provenance and citation parts. We understand that this is particularly important for the IPCC. And we do encode information about an execution in the database, including, as I said, all the files and versions of software that was used for the evaluation. And the results are immutable. So even if we have to rerun something because, for example, we fixed something with a new version of the software, we will not overwrite results, but we will add a new result. And that will allow us to generate provenance records from the database for a selected set of data. And at the moment, all of these fields already exist in the database, but we haven't implemented the actual creation of provenance records. But what we hope to be that we will be, or what we're aiming to support, is which model output, including version, was used for this given metric value, what metrics were available at a given time, and are there any new metric values available, of course. And we have worked with TG Data on a citation approach, and there is a proposed provenance template based on the ESML tool provenance records, but this is yet to be implemented. There's an EU project starting next week, Futura, where we are planning to deliver this work and add the provenance framework to the ref. So this should happen within the next 18 months, and they should be available then via the API and also in the portal. And also we hope to implement static URLs for results as of a specific day. But it would be very useful to get early feedback now to make sure that the solution is fit for purpose. So there are some questions around what exactly do you want to cite? Do you want to, or like what should the provenance record be pointing at specific input data sets? Or is there, do you want a collection of metrics and have all of the data sets that were used in this collection? So for example, everything that went into a specific figure. This is something that, so the granularity is something that we haven't fully worked out yet. So stuff like this would be super useful to get your feedback as well. Recapping here. What we saw how to fetch data from the Ref API, and this allows to create figures that can be easily updated as new data arrives. And yeah, if you focus on figure generation, then you can focus on figure generation because you don't have to do all the model evaluation runs and download all of the data. So here would be our first Q&A session to the more general one. I realized that afterwards we have a more technical session where it goes into detail of where you can, how you can find out which diagnostics are available and so on. But there might already be questions around what the ref is and what it can do today. And also maybe you have already feedback if we have understood the IPCC requirements correctly or what we have missed.
Thank you, Mika. And we've got Yiling has her hand up.
Hi, thank you very much. That was very, very useful. I think I have 2 questions for now, and I'm sorry if you have already answered them. I think because we are right now preparing our first order draft, so my question is a little bit on how the ref or the ref AFT can help us already in this first draft. And one of my question is that what if the data is non-summarized? From what I gathered is I can also run ref locally, but ref AFT not. So let's say I already have a few ESM data available, but they're non-summarized and they are on another server. What can we do with that?
Yeah, the ref really needs the standardized metadata, so essentially summarized data. You have to have your data summarized so that it can actually check which diagnostics it can run on it. So this is a step that you will have to do if you want to use the ref.
Okay.
But then you can run it locally if you have it locally available.
Okay, so the summarization is the most important part. As long as we have that, then it doesn't need to be on ESGF. We can still run it. Is that the...
Yes, you can run it yourself on your own data.
Any server. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool. One more question is, what if there is a diagnostic that we would like, but it's not available right now? Is there a process to request for this?
Yeah, maybe Manjini, you can say something there.
Yes, yeah. So 2 things about this. So for the longer term, there's going to be a ref governance body that will basically approve of any new submissions for diagnostics. The only way to get diagnostics into the ref is going to be through one of the existing softwares that are already part of the ref. The ref does not have any science diagnostics of its own. It's what's contributed through these different software. For the shorter term in the interim, given that IPCC timelines are really tight, the CMIP panel has the authority to kind of like decide if a diagnostic should be included. It would still have to come through an existing software though. So yeah, that's still the pathway, but the approval process, there will be a body to kind of govern that in the interim as well.
Okay, thank you.
And of course, maybe adding to that, someone also has to implement the diagnostic, right? It's not a ref thing to implement a new diagnostic. It needs to be available through one of the packages, or
Yeah, Mika's absolutely right. So there's 2 aspects to it. One is implementing it in that package, and then that interfacing with the ref, that also has to be kind of seen too. So these pathways exist, but when you put in a new thing, you have to kind of put the blocks in place, and someone has to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have we got any other questions just now? Please either put up your hand or write in the chat. Charlotte?
Yeah, you talked about wanting feedback about the granularity for figure citation information. So that's something that we're very interested in as well at CEDA for producing metadata. We're working with the technical support unit for Working Group 1. So it'd be useful to have a conversation with you following on from this about that. Is there a particular person that we could invite from the ref to join a conversation with us to talk about that?
Yeah, probably is most useful to contact us through the GitHub issues or discussions if it's not really an issue, and
Okay.
then or the mailing list, and then we can figure it out.
Great.
Who has
Thanks.
the time. Thank you.
We've maybe not got any other questions just now. I'll let Mika continue, and there's another chance for questions in a little bit.
Sure. So now to a bit more to the ref features in detail. So the diagnostic collection. We have the model benchmarking task team developed a set of diagnostic collections through community consultation and through what was available already. And there are 26 collections as of today covering 5 themes. So diagnostics about the atmosphere, the Earth system, land and land ice, sea and sea ice, and impacts and adaptations. They are versioned and published on Zenodo. So on this link, you will find the list of all the diagnostics, and you can will also later show how you can see them on the dashboard. But I also put the link into the chat. Specifically, the dashboard is probably the easiest place to start with exploring what is available in the AFT version today. It hasn't been run on the full set of CMIP 6, but on a large collection of CMIP 6 results for about 40 diagnostics. And for a limited set of variants, the CMIP 6 results are complete, and also relatively soon with the full deployment, we will be able to have full CMIP 6 results. And we'll have a short overview of the dashboard to change what I'm sharing again. Now sharing the dashboard. And yeah, we have some disclaimer at first because it's still under development. Maybe you can see better in the light view. And the first thing is, of course, to explore which diagnostics are available. And here is the full list of diagnostics from these 3 diagnostic providers. And you can filter around themes or search a diagnostic by name. And here are cards which show each diagnostic and a short description of a diagnostic. So, for example, cloud radiative effects, you can see that there are series values available, but no scalar values available, and that there are actual executions. So an execution is an evaluation of the diagnostic is available. And this is, of course, part of the atmosphere theme. Here, let's see TCR. You can also search. Yeah, see the transient climate response, TCR. If you look at the details, you can see more documentation and also critically a link to the provider documentation, because as I said, this is always evaluated by a model provider, a metric provider, in this case ESML2, and the provider documentation then is of course more more detailed and has all of the references to how it is actually calculated. And this is then the place if you want to look at all of these details, and this is linked from the ref. The other thing you can see here is then, let's start maybe with the execution groups. You can see here for which data this was executed, and if the execution was successful, so if the could be evaluated. Sometimes it can't be evaluated because some metadata is not matching, or maybe also because of errors in the recipe, but usually because some data is not available. And here we can see that this has been evaluated then for the different models and for different experiments. And then we can see which scalar values are available from these diagnostic evaluations. And then we can see here for each of the source ID and then the experiment ID, or the member ID, we can see that the metric TCR here is evaluated to a specific value that you then can also query through the API or download here as CSV directly. We have also some outlier detection here, which is a bit experimental, so you can also switch it off and then get all of the data, including any outliers. Then TCR is also providing series, so time series information. You can see here a short spark line. So in this case here, this is the global annual mean TAS anomaly relative to a linear fit of the PI control run. So a relatively, this is a metric that involves multiple input data sets, and it creates this data series that you then can check out. For example, see the plot and also other outputs that were generated by the evaluation. So ESML2 generated a plot itself, and then also the netcdf file and some overview data, and you can open all of these and access all of these. You can also download all of the outputs as a metric bundle, or all files as a tarball. And you can see then all of the outputs only of this one execution here. But going back to the overview, you can see figures which have all of the executions, or specific executions. These are all of the figures that have been generated for all of the different evaluations. And there are some dynamic figures which are built from the transient climate response data. Here, for example, this is just a box and whisker figure. Another one which might be more interesting here is looking at the data explorer, which has the dynamic figures. And here we can look into ocean and sea ice. And here we can see that we can also have these box and whisker diagrams with some of this outlier detection. We can then also say, show me also the outliers, which will regenerate the figure, hopefully show the outliers. No, it doesn't. But we can see that we can also have other diagrams here. So for example, there's a Taylor diagram where we can see the spread of model results, or there are some scatter plots. And these are defined for the assessment fast track specifically, just to get an overview of what is available. And of course we expect, so here's also time series data. And this is will be useful to then see, for example, how many CMIP 7 results are already available and how diverse are they. For quickly evaluating this, the dashboard is hopefully useful. But of course, we expect that if you want to build a figure for your for the report, then you will want to go through the notebook approach. So that was the dashboard. Check it out yourself and see how it what is available. This is probably the easiest way to find if the diagnostic that you require is available before you start querying the API. Check if it's available on the dashboard, and if it is, it will tell you the slug and the provider that you need to query it from the API. Now, maybe also the time to acknowledge one known gap at the moment. So the observations community has co-produced an augmented set of uncertainty variables aligned with the OBS4MIPS data already. There are some pathways to publish uncertainty data in separate CMIP files or in CF style ancillary variables. And reference dataset providers selected for this ref version have been contacted for that information, but it's not yet incorporated in this ref release. We hope to bring it into subsequent versions of the ref and the AFT ref, but it's not yet available. So some reading here, which should be quite useful if you want to use the ref. So the ref methodology paper also lists all the diagnostics and also talks a bit more about the method behind and the motivation behind the ref. Then there is just the list of CMIP 7 assessment fast track diagnostics, the technical list available on Zenodo. Then there's the model evaluation overview paper that is quite recently released. The best practice guideline on how to use the ref outputs. And if you're interested in uncertainty, specifically the uncertainty checklist for the ref. So wrapping up before we have a short break is maybe some questions you can think about in the break is what key workflows do you think the AFT ref could already help you with? What requirements would you have before you can start using the ref? And what key workflows do you think the AFT ref can't help you with? And especially, of course, do you think that it could help you if some changes were made? What would those changes be? Yeah, and I think with these questions to think about, we can have a 10-minute break. Hope everybody's back. Maybe before we go to the how the ref works part, did you have time to think about the questions for the break and have do you have some feedback here already? I think we have the time to collect if you do.
If anyone has any feedback for Mika just now?
Otherwise, we are also happy to take this. As I said in the GitHub discussions, I will have a link later on.
Great. I think we can provide all the links and then people can hopefully engage. Oh, Yiling?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sorry, since nobody asked, I would just ask maybe a really stupid question. But what was the difference between the diagnostics and the data explorer tab that you showed just now? Because I realized that there are some variables that are in one and not the other, and just wanted to know.
Yeah. The diagnostic tab basically shows all the diagnostics that are available, in more or less in a raw form. And the data explorer is some visualizations we have built specifically for the AFT ref, which may be like higher value to explore some of this, but we haven't developed for all of the diagnostics already these fancy visualizations.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. Then let's go to a bit more technical, how the ref works, how it works behind the scenes, and also what does that mean if you want to use it, and what does it mean if you want to extend it. So the ref lifecycle of data is really this, that first data is ingested, which means it catalogs available model and reference data sets. You do this maybe once manually if you know that you have static data available, but of course this ingest is done continuously in the official deployment for the CMIP 7 assessment fast track. And then from that, we work out which diagnostic runs are required or which are possible now. And those are then executed. The diagnostics are run depending on the available hardware and the chosen executor. And then the results are visualized or served via files, the API and the dashboard. And looking at this more specifically, we have already told this, the ref requires summarized netcdf datasets. This is a standard that it can read. And here is maybe the key difference between what the traditional way of running these and evaluating the diagnostics are and how it is done in the ref is if you have, for example, an ESML tool recipe, you usually define a list of data sets that you want to run on and the reference data sets that you want to use. But instead of relying on this hard-coded list, in the ref, diagnostics define their data requirements. And as soon as the data requirements are met with a specific group of data, a recipe is generated and then executed. And this is why we need accurate and consistent global attributes in input datasets. Because, for example, a dataset, a metric could say it requires a TAS data, and it also requires the area cell A data that is fitting. And then, of course, the ref will figure out what is the corresponding area cell A data for this TAS dataset that is available. And only if both are available, then a metric can be a diagnostic can be evaluated and the metrics generated. And this is why we require accurate and consistent global attributes in input datasets, which then means we require summarized netcdf datasets. And yeah, for CMIP 7, this quality assurance and quality control has been a focus, and that is what enables this automated evaluation. And it of course also means that we don't need so many workarounds in the diagnostics. There might still be some workarounds required in some diagnostics, but we hope that this will be really little. But this of course also means that models that have non-compliant metadata will result in a failed or evaluation, so in a failed execution or in missing or incorrect results. And we hope that performing these checks as far upstream as possible ensures that we don't need to propagate these workarounds everywhere, but that this will be fixed upstream in the pipeline, and then everybody can use fixed results instead of or fixed data sets instead of having to fix it again. For observations, of course, observations are also critical for model evaluation. And the diagnostic definitions also specify the dataset and version that should be used for evaluation. So the version of the observation that should be used. And yeah, there was really a lot of effort to get summarized results with open and permissive licensing for all the observations that are needed for the diagnostics. And the reference observations are then hosted on ops4mips where possible. And then some datasets are not yet on ops4mips. And they are published as, currently as an ops4ref collection at CEDA. But we also hope that this converges and we get everything into ops4mips eventually. And then, as already said, the providers then contribute the diagnostics. The diagnostics come from existing model evaluation packages, such as, at the moment, ESM-Valtool, iLAMP and IOMB, and PMP, the PCMDI metrics package. These are the three that are currently already built into the ref, where it is like the integration problem has already been solved. And there is a common interface to describe a diagnostic within the ref. And then there is a small package for each provider that provides the interface between the ref and the evaluation package and makes sure that the inputs from the ref are provided to the evaluation package in a form that it can use. And then the outputs of the evaluation are read back into the ref database so that it can be saved in the common format. And the ref then manages the orchestration, the environments, so installing all of the needed dependencies for running a specific evaluation, and the bookkeeping of all input and output datasets. So how does this diagnostic definition look like? This is all done in Python. And diagnostic definition, of course, defines a name and a slug, which is a unique identifier for a diagnostic. It's unique within the provider. And then you specify the data requirements. As I said, you cannot hard code this because, for example, for CMIP 7, the results are not yet available. So instead, we make this recipe where we have the requirement of the source type. So for the recipes for CMIP 6, it's the source dataset type is CMIP 6, and for CMIP 7, it's CMIP 7 because it's slightly differently how the metadata is structured. And then you have filters. For example, for this global mean time series diagnostic definition, you filter the variable ID to get TAS datasets. And then whenever a new TAS dataset becomes available, this will match this. And then you also specify how this is grouped. So what will create separate execution groups, which means separate evaluations. Here it is grouped by source ID, experiment ID, and variant labels, so that you get the different so that you can later query and get statistics about this. And then there are some constraints that you can also define. For example, here in the global mean time series, it requires a contiguous time range, and it also needs area cell A or other supplementary data sets. And the ref will then check that this is true and available. And only if it's all of these requirements are met, it will then run the actual diagnostic, which is in this execute method, which has essentially the science code, which is then called in the appropriate evaluation package. And then, if this is decided, this is all decided in the solve, and that solve then doesn't blindly rerun all of the execution groups. So if it has figured out what can all be evaluated given the current input data, it then checks, of course, which have already been evaluated. And then only those that haven't been evaluated, those are executed. And usually it's executed because new data sets are available, but of course also if the diagnostic has been updated, then it should also be run, and a new execution is scheduled and then run. How this is executed depends on the environment where it's run. So if you're running it on Kubernetes, the Celery executor is used. If you're running it locally, it will just be executed in process. But of course, that depends on the diagnostic that you want to evaluate, how it is implemented, to what kind of computational requirements you need to meet in order to be able to run this. Then the result of the execution. Usually during the execution, multiple output files are generated, so netcdf files, figures, HTML, and all of these results are stored and immutable within the ref. And they are also by the ref provider package converted into the CMIP format for describing the metric values. And then in the database, everything around this execution is stored. So the input data sets that were used, also hashes of the input data set, which can be used to see if the input set has changed. The diagnostic version and the provider version, so the software versions of all of this, the outputs that were generated, the log output, and also the metric values, so scalar values and 1D series extracted from the run. They are also stored directly in the database, so they don't have to be re-extracted from the netcdf files or similar. And then, of course, to make this possible, each diagnostic needs some glue code and some chain this interface to join the ref. So this is even if the diagnostic is available already in one of the packages, there needs to be this translation layer, and that is part of the ref. But the diagnostic code itself stays upstream in the package, and we are not forking this. We want to use the community versions that are available, and any updates to diagnostics should then also must go through the packages where they are implemented. And to integrate this, there are really three concepts which need to be matched: the data requirements, so what input data the diagnostic needs, as said, described in these more generalized terms so that it can match future input data, the outputs and metric values, what it produces, and then some test cases, how we verify that it runs correctly. Because this is, of course, something that we want to know. We don't want to just know because the data looks odd. We want to know if it's running correctly, and we want to be able to test this automatically so that when we update future things in the ref, and we are not breaking something inadvertently. So now I would like to show you the available tutorials. So we have a set of tutorials available. And this is in this GitHub repository, the Climate Ref tutorials. I will show you which ones available which are available shortly, but you can also check it out and run Jupyter locally to access it later. Also, if you want to experiment right now or after the workshop, you can use this tutorials ref page, which I can also copy the link here. As a user, it asks you for the user and the password. As a user, use something unique. Any name will work as long as you use another name, like a name that hasn't been taken by anybody else. And the password is IPCC Ref tutorial. It will only be available, like we can only promise it for a few days for this tutorial, but this might be the fastest way to run this. But now I can show you also what is available. So in here, we have the 05 notebook that I have already shown you earlier with your appetite. But there are more structured ones. So you should probably start with the 01 notebook, which has introduces the ref concepts. Most of this we have covered in this talk, but and you can of course look at the slides, but it might be useful to do this more live. And what it does here, what we can see is how to use the client to access ref results, how to, for example, list all the diagnostics programmatically. Here you can see the first 10 diagnostics that are available. There's 47 in total. Then also the different providers, and introduces more on a technical level this concept of execution groups and executions, where an execution group is what is basically matching of this of a specific data set and grouping within the diagnostic, and then an execution is with a specific version of the diagnostic, and then or with a specific version of the reference data, and then you can have multiple executions in the execution group. And yeah, that is the introductory notebook that is probably useful. And then we have one notebook which introduces how to query the Ref API for results. Of course, you also first have to list diagnostics, and then you can query a specific diagnostic, which is shown here. First, how to retrieve scalar values, and then later on also how to retrieve series values in a notebook, and then yeah, how to have a little plot, and then also how to fetch output files, netcdf or figures that were already generated. All of this you can see in the notebook. I think we don't have to go through the details here. Probably more useful to do that on your own. The third notebook shows a bit more figure generation, how it's in Python it's useful to the best to generate a figure from, for example, metric from scalar metrics, which we've also already seen in the 05 notebook with the ECS temperature figure, a bit more interesting. And then as kind of specific notebook, this is for running a diagnostic locally. If you have a diagnostic that is not part of the AFT ref and you actually have to run the ref locally, then this shows you how you could run the diagnostic locally. here is a small toy diagnostic is implemented here in the tutorial, and it's run on sample data. Of course, we would likely want to do this on real data, so there's some changes needed to make this work for your use case. But it fetches a lot of data, and then it shows how a custom diagnostic provider to put your specific diagnostic into the ref would be built, and how you then can build a data catalog from disk. So here we use the sample data, which is like CMIP6-like data. Of course, in the real world, you would want to somehow provide the real CMIP6 or then soon CMIP7 data here. And then the 05 notebook you have already seen. We will expand this tutorial collection in the coming weeks or months, or like continuously during development. Let's see, hopefully we can also add an R example relatively soon. And yeah, as I said, do experiment with this later on, and we hope it's useful. And I think this is everything that there is to see about the ref in this workshop, at least. So this is the other opportunity to ask questions. I will have a small recap after the questions, but maybe first the questions.
Has anyone got any questions? Please raise your hand or ask them in the chat. I know there's a lot of information, so maybe everyone needs to absorb and then reflect. So perhaps maybe Mika sort of run through the recap, then we can give another quick chance at the end for sort of final questions. And then tomorrow we'll circulate the slides, the recordings, and all the links for the GitHub and for the discussions. So you can add your thoughts there. And we've got 2 drop-in sessions next week, but you can come along and ask any questions.
Yeah, sure. So what have we covered? So we have the assessment fast track graph, which has a dashboard and an API to access and explore data. So the dashboard is more for exploration, and the API is to access the data in a stable manner. There is it has a community governed set of diagnostics covering a wide range of climate relevant diagnostics and themes. And it will be updated live in response to CMIP7 publication. That is really the key use case here, the AFT ref. And then there is the AFT, the ref framework, which is the basis for any expansion of the ref, including if you want to run something locally or with specific data that is maybe not available publicly or not on the ESGF. Yeah, and the ref framework is the one which is extensible and could also be used in other contexts. And the key takeaways here is you should be able to explore and then explain how the AFT ref could support your and others' work, get feedback on, and then maybe explain to us why the AFT ref would work for key use cases. So tell us what is missing. Yeah, as I said, please ask questions now or via GitHub or in follow-up drop-in sessions. We will then see how we could fill the gaps if there are gaps. And yeah, this feedback is really critical to be able to push forward and get this also, hopefully, get something moving on timelines which are useful for you. The discussion board on GitHub is here linked. I can also copy the link here. That is the question for, that is really a place for questions and feedback. Of course, if you have, like you find an error, also don't hesitate to raise an issue in GitHub. That is the best way to, those are the best ways to contact us. Here is the collection of links, which is probably most useful when you get the slides tomorrow to check out all of these links. This is also all reachable via the main GitHub repository. And of course, you can also contact the CMIP IPO if you have any questions. And of course, with thanks to everybody who has worked in the REF delivery team and the packages that we rely on. And of course, also the CMIP model benchmarking task team and the funders and the whole contribution and other community.